Rain fell hard over the city, beating against the glass walls of Luna's cafe like angry drummers. Inside, the smell of roasted coffee beans and warm pastries filled the air. It was the kind of place where rich people came to pretend they were ordinary. But everyone knew that tonight, one man inside was anything but ordinary. He sat alone in the back corner, Dominic Rinaldi, a name whispered more than spoken in this city. At 38, he had built an empire that stretched from the docks to downtown. Some called him a businessman. Others called him the king of the streets. Both were true. Dominic didn't walk into rooms. He claimed them. He wore a dark suit perfectly fitted to his broad shoulders, a gold watch that caught the light every time he lifted his coffee cup, and eyes that missed nothing. 2 men stood near the entrance, his bodyguards. No one got too close unless he wanted them to. Across the cafe, Lena Hayes, a 24-year-old waitress, tried to stay calm as she balanced a tray. It was her 3rd week on the job. Her hands shook so much she worried she'd spill the drinks before she reached the tables. She wasn't used to customers like him. "Breathe," whispered Marta, the older waitress beside her. "He's just a man, honey. A very dangerous man, but still just a man." Lena gave a weak smile. "That doesn't help." She looked toward the corner booth. Dominic Rinaldi sat completely still, one hand on the table, the other scrolling through his phone. His sharp profile was lit by the dim amber light. The man looked carved out of control and quiet power. When Marta handed Lena the small silver tray with a steaming cup, she whispered, "That's his order. Black coffee. No sugar. No cream. No mistakes." Lena nodded and started toward him. Her heart thudded so loud she could hear it over the jazz music playing softly in the background. Halfway there, she almost tripped. The cup rattled, and a few drops of hot coffee splashed onto the saucer. She steadied her breathing. "You can do this. Just deliver the coffee and walk away." When she reached the booth, Dominic looked up. His eyes were dark, deep and unreadable. She had never seen eyes like that before. "Your coffee, sir," she said quietly, setting it down. Dominic didn't respond immediately. He leaned back, studying her face with quiet interest. Silence stretched between them like a thin wire ready to snap. Most people would have started talking to fill it, but not Lena. She just stood there, nervous but waiting. Then, without knowing why, she did something completely out of character. She slipped a small folded napkin beside the cup. Her fingers trembled as they brushed against the table. "Thank you," Dominic said at last, his voice low and smooth. "You're welcome, sir." She turned quickly and walked back toward the counter, her pulse racing. Dominic watched her go, his sharp mind noting every detail, the trembling hands, the nervous posture, the way her eyes darted around the room. He'd met thousands of people, most trying to impress him, manipulate him, or flatter him. This girl looked like she wanted to disappear. When she disappeared into the kitchen, Dominic reached for the napkin. It was folded with careful precision. That alone caught his attention. He unfolded it under the table. 6 words, written in hurried handwriting. "They're coming for you tonight. Run." Dominic's expression didn't change, but a storm brewed behind his calm eyes. He read the words again. Run. Nobody told him to run. Not in 20 years. He slipped the note into his pocket, finished his coffee in one slow sip, and stood. His men instantly straightened. "Check the exits," he ordered quietly. As they moved, Dominic walked toward the kitchen. He needed to know who that girl was and how she knew something no one outside his inner circle could have known. The kitchen doors swung open with a hiss of steam and noise. Chefs froze mid-motion. The room went silent. Pots stopped clattering. Every eye turned toward him. Dominic's presence did that. He carried an aura that demanded obedience even without words. At the far end, Lena stood by the sink, her back to him, shoulders stiff. She must have felt him enter because she froze, her hands gripping the counter. "You," Dominic said. His voice was soft, but it carried. "Outside." Lena turned slowly, her face pale. "Me." "Yes, you." The head chef tried to step in. "Sir, if there's a problem, I..." Dominic gave him a single look, and the man stopped speaking instantly. Lena untied her apron, her hands shaking slightly. Then she walked toward the back door, glancing once at her co-workers. No one dared move. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The alley behind the cafe was narrow and dimly lit. 2 bodyguards followed them out, standing at each end to block escape. Dominic stood under the awning, his coat catching the rain. "Start talking," he said. Lena swallowed hard. "Please, just listen before you get angry." "I'm listening." "My brother," she began, voice trembling. "His name is Caleb Hayes. He works, or used to work, for people who hate you. The Capri's family. I heard them talking 2 nights ago. They said they were going to hit you tonight. Here. They don't know I'm his sister. But I heard everything. They said you'd be at your usual table at Luna's." Dominic's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped an octave. "You're sure?" "Yes. I wouldn't lie to you." He studied her for a long moment. Her blue eyes were full of fear, but not for herself. "Why warn me?" he asked finally. "You could have walked away." Lena blinked rapidly, tears threatening. "Because my brother made a mistake. He got involved with bad people. But he's not evil, just stupid. And if they kill you, they'll kill him next. I thought if I warned you, maybe you could stop it, stop them, before that happens." Dominic took a slow breath, his sharp mind fitting the pieces together. "Where are they keeping your brother?" "At the old factory on 5th Street. They said he's not allowed to leave until the job's done." Dominic pulled out his phone, typed a short message, and sent it. Within seconds, a reply came. On it, code red. 15 minutes. He slid the phone away and looked back at her. "You did the right thing, Lena Hayes. But this conversation never happened. You go home, you stay there, and you don't talk to anyone. Understand?" Lena nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." He turned to leave, but she called after him softly. Are you going to hurt them?" Dominic paused in the rain. "Only if they make me." He walked away into the night, flanked by his men. The rumble of black cars filled the street a minute later. Lena stood there, shivering under the awning, wondering what storm she had just set loose. The next morning, the city buzzed with whispers. 5 men from the Capri family were missing. The police found nothing. The newspapers printed nothing. But in certain circles, everyone knew exactly what had happened. Lena sat in her tiny apartment, staring at her phone. Her brother had texted her just before dawn. "I'm safe. Leaving the city. Don't ask questions. I'll call when I can." She had cried from relief, though the message left her uneasy. What had Dominic done to save him? A knock at the door startled her. She peeked through the peephole and saw a man in a black suit. Not Dominic, someone younger, cleaner cut. "Miss Hayes," the man said politely. "Mr. Rinaldi sent me." Her stomach dropped. "Why?" "He'd like to thank you in person. There's a car waiting downstairs." I can't. I have work." The man smiled slightly. "Mr. Rinaldi insists. You've already been given the day off." When she hesitated, he added gently, "He saved your brother last night. He just wants to talk." Lena's throat tightened. She grabbed her coat and followed him downstairs. A sleek black car waited by the curb. The driver opened the door, and Lena stepped inside. The smell of leather and expensive cologne filled the space. Her hands twisted nervously in her lap as the city blurred past the windows. They stopped in front of a tall glass building, one of those that screamed power and money. The driver led her to a private elevator. It opened into a penthouse office overlooking the entire city. Dominic stood by the window, talking on the phone. When he saw her, he ended the call immediately. "Lena," he said, his tone softer than she expected. "Sit down." She perched on the edge of a leather chair. "Is my brother okay?" "He's alive," Dominic said. He's on a flight to California as we speak. He won't be part of their business anymore. Lena's relief was obvious. Thank you. I don't know how to repay. He raised a hand. You already did. You saved my life. She looked down, her cheeks warming. I just did what anyone would do. No, Dominic said quietly. Most people wouldn't. You walked straight into a lion's den with nothing but a napkin and courage. That makes you very rare, Lena Hayes. His words sent a strange shiver down her spine. After a moment of silence, he added, There's one more thing. The people you warned me about, they're gone. That means you're safe. But if they ever find out it was you who warned me, things could get dangerous again. Lena's heart pounded. What should I do? Stay close, he said simply. I'll make sure nothing happens to you. Her eyes widened. You mean? I mean, I owe you my life. And I always pay my debts. He moved closer, his presence filling the room. You're not afraid of me, are you? Lena hesitated. I was. A little. And now. I don't know. Maybe I should be. But you don't feel like the monster everyone says you are. Dominic's lips curved into a faint smile. Be careful, Lena. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world outside the penthouse disappeared. The air felt charged, heavy with unspoken things. Then Dominic broke the moment with quiet professionalism. You'll have protection for a few days. A driver will take you to work and back. After that, you'll be free to decide what happens next. She stood slowly. I don't know how to thank you. Just stay alive, he said. That'll be enough. As she turned to leave, Dominic called out, Lena. She looked back. He was holding something, a single white rose. For courage, he said, placing it in her hand. Her fingers brushed his, and for a second, the distance between their worlds didn't matter. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded once. Go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be different. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Dominic returned to the window. The city stretched beneath him, beautiful and brutal. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. Down on the street, Lena sat in the car clutching the rose, unaware that her life had just changed forever. Outside, rain began to fall again. Soft, steady, and full of promises. Lena didn't sleep much that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Dominic's face. Calm, unreadable, dangerous, yet somehow kind. The white rose lay in a glass of water beside her bed, its petals open and perfect. It felt out of place in her tiny apartment. By morning, news of the Capri family's sudden disappearance had already spread through the city. People whispered in cafes, bars, and markets. No one said Dominic's name out loud, but everyone knew. Lena walked to work with her heart thumping. The street looked the same, but she felt different. Changed. She couldn't stop replaying that moment in the alley, how close she had been to danger, and how quickly Dominic had handled everything. When she arrived at the cafe, Marta grabbed her arm. You heard? The Capri's warehouse burned down last night. They say nobody made it out. Lena swallowed hard. Yeah, I heard. Marta lowered her voice. And that man, the one you served? He hasn't been back. Maybe it's for the best. Maybe, Lena said quietly, though her chest tightened. By noon, the cafe was busy. Lena tried to focus on orders and customers, but she felt someone watching her. When she turned, she froze. A tall man in a gray suit stood near the door. Dominic's driver. He approached the counter with calm confidence. Miss Hayes, Mr. Rinaldi would like to see you this evening. 7 o'clock. He'll send a car. Marta's eyes went wide. Is that? Lena forced a small smile. It's fine, Marta. He just wants to talk. But inside, she wasn't sure it was fine. At exactly 7, a black Mercedes pulled up outside her building. The same driver stepped out and opened the door for her. This time, the car didn't take her to an office building. Instead, it stopped outside La Voluto, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Lena had walked past it before, the kind of place that had guards outside and gold-lettered menus. She hesitated. "Are you sure this is right?" The driver smiled. "He's waiting for you inside." Her heart pounded as she walked through the glass doors. Inside, the lighting was soft and golden. Waiters in white shirts moved like dancers. The maitre d' greeted her by name and led her upstairs to a private dining room. When the door opened, she saw him. Dominic stood by a floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the glittering city skyline. He turned when she entered. For the first time, he smiled, not the cold, polite kind, but something warmer. "Lena, I'm glad you came." She tried to smile back. "You make it hard to say no." He gestured toward the table. "Please, sit." She sat carefully, smoothing her dress. She'd borrowed a simple black one from Marta. Compared to his elegance, she felt like a shadow. "You look nervous," he said. "I am," she admitted. "Men like you don't usually invite waitresses to dinner." "Men like me don't usually owe their lives to waitresses," Dominic replied. "That makes you special." Lena's cheeks flushed. "You don't owe me anything." Dominic studied her quietly. "I disagree." For a moment, neither spoke. Then he broke the silence. "I had people check on your brother. He's safe. Starting a new life under a different name." Her eyes filled with relief. "Thank you. That means everything." He nodded. "You deserve peace." He paused. "But I also wanted to make you an offer." Lena frowned. "An offer?" He leaned forward slightly. "I want you to work for me." Her heart skipped. "What?" "Not like that," he said quickly, seeing her expression. "I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. I have several businesses that need managing. I could use someone I can trust." Lena laughed nervously. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Dominic said simply. "I know you're loyal. I know you're brave. And I know you don't scare easily. That's rare in my world." She stared at him, unsure what to say. "Why me?" "Because you remind me of something I lost a long time ago," he said softly. "A sense of right and wrong. You act from your heart, not for gain." She swallowed. "And if I say no?" His smile was gentle. "Then I'll thank you for the warning that saved my life and never bother you again." The waiter entered with dinner. Pasta, steak, wine. Dominic waited until they were alone again. "I'm not trying to pull you into my world, Lena," he said. "I'm offering you a way to live comfortably. To stop worrying about rent, bills, or safety. You'd work in one of my cafes. No danger." She hesitated. "And if I work for you, people will know who I'm connected to." "They'll know you're under my protection," he said. That word, protection, sent a shiver through her. It sounded safe and terrifying at the same time. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "That's all I ask." They ate in silence for a while. Lena couldn't deny the strange pull she felt toward him. For all his power, Dominic seemed lonely, a man trapped inside his own empire. At the end of the meal, he stood and offered his hand. "Let me take you home." Outside, rain had started again, soft and steady. He opened the car door for her, then hesitated. "Lena," he said quietly, "you should know, things in my world move fast. If you ever feel unsafe, you call me." "I don't even have your number," she said. He took her phone gently, entered a contact, and handed it back. "Now you do." The car pulled away. Lena sat in silence, staring at the glowing name on her screen. Dominic Rinaldi. 2 days passed before Lena heard from him again. She had almost convinced herself that the dinner had been a dream when a message appeared on her phone. "Dominic. Still thinking?" She smiled before she could stop herself and replied. "Lena, Yes. Maybe. Dominic. Good. Come to the cafe on 7th Street at noon tomorrow. I want to show you something. The next day, Lena arrived early. The cafe on 7th was beautiful, all glass, marble, and warm lighting. It felt different from Luna's, more luxurious. Dominic was already there, talking to a man in a gray suit. When he saw her, he dismissed the man with a nod. "Welcome," he said. "This is one of my businesses. If you take my offer, this could be your place." "My place? I'd make you manager. The staff's loyal. You'd run the daily operations, hire people, make decisions." Lena's mouth fell open. "That's a lot." "You can handle it," he said. "You're smart." She walked around the cafe, admiring the setup, the shiny espresso machine, the quiet hum of the place. "Why trust me with something like this?" "Because sometimes you have to trust the person least expected," Dominic said. "Everyone else around me wants something. You don't." She met his gaze. "And what do you want?" For a second, he didn't answer. Then, quietly, "To see what it feels like to be around someone who doesn't lie." Their eyes held, and something electric passed between them. She looked away first. "I don't know, Dominic," she said. "This world of yours, it's not mine." "Then make this cafe your world," he said. "No crime, no violence. Just coffee and peace." It sounded impossible, but also tempting. "I'll try," she whispered. "That's all I ask." That night, Lena sat in her apartment, staring at the contract he had sent. It was simple, legal. A real salary, benefits, everything. She signed it, still not fully believing what she was doing. The next morning, she started as the new manager of the 7th Street Cafe. The staff greeted her politely but cautiously. They knew who owned the place. By noon, Dominic arrived. His presence drew every eye in the room, but he didn't seem to care. He sat at his usual corner table, watching her work. After a while, he called her over. "You're fitting in," he said. "I'm trying not to mess up," she replied, smiling. "You won't." He reached into his jacket and handed her a small box. "What's this?" "Consider it a welcome gift." Inside was a silver bracelet, simple but elegant. "It's beautiful," she said, running her fingers over it. "It's a tracker," he said calmly. Her head snapped up. "What?" He smirked. "Kidding. It's just a bracelet. Not funny." "Maybe not," he admitted, still smiling. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the air between them thick with something unspoken. Then Dominic's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his entire expression changed. "What is it?" she asked. He stood abruptly. "Nothing for you to worry about." "Dominic." He hesitated at the door. "You remember what I said? If you ever feel unsafe, you call me. That works both ways. If I don't answer, you stay here. Understand?" Lena nodded slowly. "I understand." He left with his 2 guards, and the cafe's atmosphere shifted. Within minutes, the TV behind the counter flashed breaking news: a gunfight downtown, believed to be between rival crime families. Lena's blood ran cold. She knew he was there. Hours passed before she heard from him. Late that night, as she sat alone in her apartment, her phone buzzed. "Dominic, still awake?" "Lena, yes. Are you okay?" "Dominic, now I am." She exhaled, realizing she had been holding her breath all evening. "Lena, was it bad?" "Dominic, handled." "Lena, handled sounds dangerous." "Dominic, everything in my life is dangerous. Except you." Her fingers froze on the screen. She didn't know how to respond. "Lena, you don't even know me that well." "Dominic, maybe not. But I want to." She stared at the words until they blurred. That night, she dreamed of rain, dim light, and a man who looked at her like she was something worth saving. The next morning, Dominic appeared at the cafe again. He looked tired, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his tie loose. But his eyes softened when he saw her. "You didn't sleep," she said quietly. "Neither did you," he replied. "How do you know?" He smiled. "Because I didn't get a good night text." Lena shook her head, hiding a smile. "You're impossible." "Maybe. But you're still here. I'm starting to think I'm crazy for it." "Then we're both crazy," he said. For a moment, it felt like the world outside didn't exist. No crime, no violence, just them and the quiet hum of the cafe. But when Dominic's phone rang again, his face hardened. He answered in low tones, turned away, and when he looked back, the softness was gone. "Stay inside today," he said. "Why? What's happening?" "Someone's testing me. I need to remind them why that's a mistake." He started to leave, but she reached out and caught his sleeve. "Be careful, Dominic." He looked down at her hand, then up at her eyes. "Always." Then he was gone again, leaving the faint scent of his cologne, and a growing fear she didn't want to name. That evening, Lena stood at the window of her apartment, staring at the rain-soaked streets below. She was no longer just a waitress. She was part of something much larger, and far more dangerous. Her phone buzzed one last time before she went to bed. "Dominic, you did well today." "Lena, I just made coffee." "Dominic, no. You kept me human." Lena put her phone down, her heart racing, and whispered to herself, "What are you doing, Lena?" But deep down, she already knew. She was falling for the man she should have feared. Rain hadn't stopped for 3 straight days, as if the city itself was trying to wash away its secrets. The cafe still opened, taxis still honked, but under the steady drizzle everyone moved faster, keeping their heads down. Lena had started doing the same. She had been manager for almost 2 weeks now. The rhythm of the cafe felt familiar. Orders, invoices, smiles, but nothing about her life was truly normal anymore. Every morning, a black car waited outside her apartment. Every night, someone walked her home. She told herself it was just security, but deep inside she knew it was control. That morning she caught her reflection in the cafe window. Same blue eyes, same messy hair, but something in her gaze had changed, something alert, sharper. "Morning, boss," said Marco, one of the baristas, grinning as he wiped the counter. "Morning," she replied, forcing a smile. "Your friend's here again," he added with a wink. She turned and saw Dominic sitting in his usual booth near the back, suit immaculate, reading the paper like any other customer. Except he wasn't any other customer. 2 men stood discreetly outside, pretending to smoke while scanning the street. Lena straightened her apron and walked over. "You really like coffee," she teased softly. "I like seeing how the new manager runs my business," he said without looking up. "Are you here to inspect me or to flirt with me?" she asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Finally he looked up, and there was a spark in his eyes. "Can't I do both?" Her heart stuttered. She rolled her eyes and set a cup of espresso before him. "You could try, but I'm very busy." "I can see that," Dominic said, smiling faintly. "But I needed to talk to you." Her stomach tightened. "About what?" "There's trouble stirring again. Another family, the Vessies, think I'm weakened after the Capri incident. They're testing boundaries." "I thought you ended all that." "In my world, peace never lasts. Someone always wants more." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I need you to be careful, Lena. If anything happens, if someone strange comes in, if you notice a car following you, you call me immediately." "Dominic, I'm just a cafe manager. Who would come after me?" He hesitated, eyes darkening. "You're not just anything anymore. People talk. They know you're close to me." Lena's pulse jumped. "Close? Is that what this is?" His gaze softened. "Closer than anyone has been in a very long time." The air between them thickened. She looked down quickly, pretending to adjust the napkin holder. "I'll be careful," she said. "Promise me." "I promise." He nodded once, finished his coffee, and stood. Lock the doors early tonight. Why? Because sometimes the shadows outside aren't just shadows. He left with that warning hanging in the air. That evening, the cafe emptied earlier than usual. The rain had turned to fog, curling around the streetlights. Lena sent the staff home and began counting the day's earnings. She almost didn't hear the door creak open. "We're closed," she called without looking up. "Then you won't mind if we make it quick," a male voice said. Her head snapped up. 3 men stood inside, soaked from the rain, their coats heavy and dark. They didn't look like customers. Her throat went dry. "Can I help you?" "Maybe," said the one in front, grinning. "We're looking for Dominic Rinaldi's little pet project." Lena's heart hammered. "You should leave." The man stepped closer, his boots squeaking on the floor. "We just want to deliver a message." Lena backed away toward the counter. "I'll tell him you came by." "Oh, I think he'll hear it loud and clear." He grabbed her arm. Before she could scream, the door burst open with a crash. 2 of Dominic's guards stormed in, guns drawn. "Down!" one shouted. The men spun around, but it was too late. Within seconds they were on the ground, disarmed and pinned. Lena stood frozen, heart racing, hands shaking. Dominic appeared in the doorway moments later, soaked and furious. "I told you to lock the doors early." I did," she stammered. "They forced it." He looked at the men on the floor, his jaw tight. "Take them," he ordered his guards. "Find out who sent them." The men were dragged out into the rain. Dominic turned back to Lena. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, trembling. "No." He stepped closer and, without thinking, pulled her into his arms. She felt his heartbeat pounding against her ear, strong and steady. "I should never have let you work here," he muttered. "It's not safe." "I'm fine," she whispered, still shaking. He pulled back, looking into her eyes. "You're not fine. You were almost—" He stopped himself. "You're coming with me. Tonight." "Where?" "Somewhere they can't reach you." "I can't just disappear, Dominic. People will. People will think you took a holiday. I'll handle everything." His tone left no room for argument. Within an hour, Lena found herself in a car heading toward the outskirts of the city. The driver said nothing, and Dominic sat beside her, his expression unreadable. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. "To one of my safe houses." "You have safe houses?" "I have enemies," he said simply. The house was nothing like she expected. It wasn't a dark mansion or a fortress. It was a glass-and-wood retreat surrounded by pine trees, quiet except for the sound of rain. "This is beautiful," she murmured. "It's the only place I can breathe," Dominic admitted. "Stay here until I say otherwise." He poured her tea, his movements surprisingly gentle. "Who were those men?" she asked finally. "Messengers. The Vessies wanted to scare me. They failed." "You mean you scared them?" she said softly. He gave a humorless smile. "Fear is the only language my world speaks." Lena studied him, seeing the exhaustion behind his strength. "Do you ever get tired of it?" "All the time," he said. "But I don't get to stop." She hesitated. "You could. You have money, power. You could walk away." His eyes met hers. "And leave everything I built? Leave the people who depend on me?" "That's not freedom, Lena. That's weakness." She opened her mouth to argue, but the words caught in her throat. He moved closer, his voice low. "But tonight, I'm not thinking about business." Her pulse quickened. "Then what are you thinking about?" He reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "About how close I came to losing you before anything even began." Her breath caught. "Dominic!" He stepped back suddenly, jaw tightening, as if fighting himself. "You should rest. The guest room's down the hall." Lena nodded, her heart still racing. "Good night." Good night, Lena. Lena woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of birds. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then the memory of last night returned. Men breaking in, Dominic's arms around her, the drive through the rain. She dressed and stepped into the living room. Dominic stood by the window, shirt sleeves rolled up, a cup of coffee in hand. Morning light softened his usually sharp features. "Morning," she said quietly. He turned, smiling faintly. "You slept. A little." She hesitated. "What happens now?" "You stay here for a few days. I'll deal with the Vessies." Lena frowned. "And by deal, you mean?" He gave her a warning look. "Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to." "Dominic, I'm not naive. You kill people, don't you?" He set down his cup, his expression unreadable. "I remove threats." "That's the same thing. It's survival." They stared at each other across the sunlit room, the tension thick. Finally she said softly, "You can justify it however you want, but it still hurts you." "I can see it." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe. He turned away. "You see too much." "I just see you," she said. He laughed under his breath. "You shouldn't." "Why?" "Because I don't deserve it." The honesty in his tone made her chest ache. They sat down to breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, silence. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving everything fresh and glistening. After a while, Dominic spoke again, his voice quiet. "When I was your age, I thought power would make me untouchable. My father taught me to win every battle, no matter the cost. But he never told me what it feels like to be alone after winning them all." Lena listened, saying nothing. "You reminded me there's still something worth losing," he continued. "That scares me more than any gun pointed at my head." She looked at him, eyes soft. "Then don't lose it." Dominic met her gaze. For the first time, his guarded expression cracked, revealing the man beneath the legend. "Lena, you don't understand what being near me means. My enemies won't stop. They'll use you to get to me. Then teach me how not to be used," she said. He blinked, caught off guard. "I can't hide forever," she went on. "If I'm going to stay in your world, I need to understand it." He studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "You're stubborn." "So I've been told." A slow smile spread across his face. "All right. Tomorrow, I'll show you how my world really works. But you'll have to promise something." "What?" "Don't run when you see the truth." "I won't." He held her gaze. "We'll see." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Dominic stepped outside to take a call. Lena watched him through the window, tall and steady, speaking in low tones. Even from a distance, she could sense the weight he carried. When he came back in, his face was grim. "What happened?" she asked. "They hit one of my warehouses," he said. "No casualties, but it's a message." "From the same family?" "Yes. They want me to retaliate. They want war. Will you give them one?" He poured himself a drink. "If I don't, they'll think I'm weak. If I do, more blood gets spilled. Either way, someone loses." "Then find another way," she urged. "There is no other way in this business." "There's always a choice, Dominic." He looked at her, frustration flickering in his eyes, and something else, something like admiration. "You really believe that, don't you?" "I have to." He set down his glass, walked over, and stopped inches from her. "Then maybe I'll try, for you." Lena's breath caught. The distance between them felt fragile, electric. "Dominic," she whispered, "you don't have to keep pretending you're made of stone." He brushed his fingers along her cheek. "And you don't have to keep pretending you're not afraid." "I'm not afraid of you," she said. "Maybe you should be." He leaned closer, his breath warm against her skin. For a moment, it felt like the world stopped. Then he pulled away abruptly, as if reminding himself who he was. "Good night, Lena." "Good night," she whispered, heart pounding. Long after he'd gone to his room, Lena sat awake on the couch, listening to the quiet hum of the forest outside. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, only that something inside her had shifted forever. She had stepped over a line she could never uncross. And deep down, she wasn't sure she wanted to. Morning light filtered through the tall windows of the safe house. The rain had cleared, leaving behind a crisp stillness that made every sound sharper, the rustle of trees, the chirp of birds, the soft hum of Dominic's voice on the phone. Lena sat at the kitchen table, watching him from across the room. He was pacing, giving orders in short, calm tones. There was no shouting, no panic, only quiet authority that made people listen. Even angry, Dominic was composed, dangerous in silence. When he finally ended the call, he turned to her. "You're up early," he said, setting his phone down. "So are you. I don't sleep much. Because of the warehouse?" He nodded. "They hit one of my shipments last night. Small loss, but the message was clear." "What message?" "That they're not done." Lena folded her arms. "You said you'd show me your world. Maybe it's time." Dominic raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want that?" "You promised," she reminded him. "No more lies." He studied her face, then sighed. "All right. But once you see this, you can't unsee it." "I can handle it," she said, though her stomach tightened. "Then get dressed. We're leaving in 30 minutes. The drive was long and quiet. Dominic's car moved through the city like a shadow, tinted windows, silent engine. Lena watched the streets roll by, noticing how everyone seemed to know when to get out of the way. Wherever Dominic's car went, traffic parted. They arrived at a warehouse near the docks, a huge structure surrounded by security fences and armed guards. Dominic stepped out first, straightening his suit jacket. "This is one of my main distribution centers," he said. "Coffee imports, wine shipments, construction supplies. Everything legal." She frowned. "And the illegal?" He gave a thin smile. "You don't start with the hardest truths. Come on." Inside, the building was spotless, organized, efficient. Workers moved crates with precision. It didn't look like a den of crime. It looked like a business. Dominic led her upstairs to an office overlooking the floor. Maps, ledgers, and digital screens lined the walls. One large screen showed a map of the city divided into colored zones. "This is the balance of power," he said, pointing to it. "Each color is a family. Each family controls territory, money, influence, loyalty. And yours?" "The largest one," he said. Lena stared at the map. "It's like a chessboard." "That's exactly what it is. Except when someone loses here, they don't get to play again." He turned to her. "You asked why I don't walk away. Because if I do, this city burns. My father built order out of chaos. If I disappear, every vulture will come for what's left." Lena's voice was soft. "You make it sound like you're protecting them." "In a way, I am. I keep the peace, my way." She leaned against the desk. "And the people who get hurt in the process?" Dominic's jaw tightened. "I try to make sure they deserve it." They stood in silence for a moment. The air smelled faintly of sea salt and machinery. Finally, Lena said, "It's strange. You talk about control, power, territory. But all I see is someone exhausted." Dominic laughed quietly. "You really don't pull your punches, do you?" "You don't scare me anymore," she said. "Maybe you should," he replied. "Maybe I shouldn't." Their eyes locked. For a long moment, neither looked away. Then a knock broke the tension. One of his men stepped in. "Boss, Antonio's here." "Send him up," Dominic said. A tall man with slicked-back hair entered. He nodded at Dominic, then glanced at Lena with surprise. "You brought company." "She's with me," Dominic said simply. Antonio smirked. "I can see that." "Report," Dominic ordered. Antonio's smile faded. "We traced the attack. The Vessies are working with a new player, someone from out of town. We're still digging, but whoever it is, they've got money and nerve. Dominic's expression hardened. I want names, Antonio. Fast. Antonio nodded. Already working on it. As he left, Lena turned to Dominic. So this is what your life is. Constant threats. Constant fights. Yes, he said. And constant survival. She looked at him for a long time, then said quietly, You need someone to remind you you're still human. He smiled faintly. That's your job now? She met his gaze without flinching. Maybe it is. That night, Dominic took her to a rooftop overlooking the city. The skyline glittered beneath them, lights reflecting on the water below. Beautiful, isn't it? He said. It is, she whispered. Hard to believe this same city hides so much darkness. He looked at her. Every city does. But sometimes light only looks brighter when surrounded by it. She turned toward him. You talk like someone who wants to change. Maybe I do, he admitted. But change is dangerous. It makes people think you're weak. Then let them think it, she said. He laughed softly. You really don't understand my world. Then teach me, she said again. He hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket and handed her something, a small silver key. What's this? Your key. To the cafe. To the office. To me, if you ever need it. Her eyes widened. Dominic. Take it, he said quietly. If you're going to stand beside me, you should have access to everything. She closed her fingers around it. What if I lose it? Then I'll come find you, he said. And for the first time, his voice wasn't the voice of a mafia king. It was just a man, raw and real, letting someone in. By the next morning, the calm had shattered. Dominic was gone before dawn, leaving only a note on the table. Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Lena paced the living room, nerves twisting in her chest. She turned on the news. Nothing. No mention of the families. No clue where Dominic had gone. By afternoon, she couldn't sit still. She stepped out onto the balcony, phone in hand, staring at the long road leading through the woods. Nothing. When her phone buzzed, she almost dropped it. Unknown number. He shouldn't have trusted you. Her blood went cold. She typed quickly. Lena. Who is this? Unknown. Ask Dominic about the deal he made in Milan. Ask him what he did to get his empire. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. Another message followed. Unknown. He's not who you think he is. And neither are you, anymore. A car engine roared in the distance. She looked up terrified, but it was Dominic's car. Relief washed through her, quickly replaced by fear when she saw his face. He was furious. He stormed into the house, his eyes sharp. Did anyone contact you? Lena hesitated. A text. From an unknown number. Show me. She handed him her phone. His jaw tightened as he read. Milan, she said softly. What did they mean? Dominic didn't answer. He deleted the messages, then turned off the phone. Dominic, talk to me. That's none of your concern. Yes, it is. If I'm part of your life now, then you can't keep me in the dark. He glared at her, anger flashing. You have no idea what you're asking for. Then tell me, she shouted. He exhaled sharply, pacing. Finally, he said, years ago, when my father died, the families refused to follow me. I was too young, too unproven. So I made a deal in Milan, with men worse than any in this city. They gave me money, soldiers, power. In exchange, I gave them territory. Blood territory. The kind that doesn't wash off. Lena's voice trembled. You killed people for them. I protected what was mine, he said coldly. It was the only way to survive. Tears filled her eyes. And you'd do it again? If it kept the people I care about alive, yes. She turned away. You sound just like them. He froze. Them. The men who used my brother. Who destroy lives for power. His expression softened immediately. Lena, I'm not them. Then prove it, she said, looking at him through tears. Prove you're not. He stepped closer, his voice low and desperate. You think I don't want to? Every day I wake up trying to hold a world together that should have fallen apart years ago. You're the only good thing I've touched in a decade, and you're asking me to be someone I don't know how to be. Her voice broke. Then learn. They stood in silence, the space between them full of anger, pain, and something deeper neither wanted to name. Finally Dominic whispered, If you stay, you'll get hurt. And if I leave? He met her eyes. I'll still get hurt. Lena took a shaky breath. Then I guess we're both in trouble. He laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. You're impossible. So are you, she said. The tension between them cracked. He reached out, hesitated, then cupped her face. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. She didn't. Dominic kissed her. Not gentle, not careful, but desperate, like a man who had finally found something worth losing. She clung to him, feeling the walls between them break. When they pulled apart, breathless, she whispered, Now what? Now, he said, I protect what's mine. That night, Dominic made calls, rapid, precise, commanding. Orders spread through the city like wildfire. By dawn, word had reached every corner. The Rinaldi family was preparing for war. Lena stood at the window, watching him work. He looked every bit the legend people feared, strong, decisive, unshakable. But she'd seen beneath it. The loneliness. The fear. The man. When he finally turned to her, his expression softened. You shouldn't see this part of me. I already have. He crossed the room and took her hand. Then stay with me through it. She squeezed his fingers. Always. Hours later, as the first light broke over the city, Dominic stood on his balcony overlooking the streets below. His men were already moving. Cars, messages, alliances forming. A storm was coming, and he could feel it in his bones. Behind him, Lena appeared in the doorway, wearing one of his shirts, her hair loose around her shoulders. Couldn't sleep? She asked. He shook his head. Too much to think about. She walked up beside him. Whatever happens, we face it together. He looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. He slipped his arm around her waist. You have no idea what you've started. She smiled faintly. Then finish it. Below them, the city stirred awake, unaware that its most powerful man had just chosen a side, not between families or empires, but between the life he'd built and the woman who might be his undoing. And for the first time, Dominic Rinaldi didn't care which side won. The city woke under heavy clouds. Smoke rose from the eastern docks, the faint trace of another battle fought in the dark hours before dawn. Word spread quietly. Dominic Rinaldi was back on the move. Lena knew before he told her. She saw it in his face when he came home, that quiet, controlled rage that hid behind calm eyes. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, his hands still faintly dusted with gunpowder. He didn't speak at first. He poured a drink, stared at the amber liquid, then finally said, They hit us again. 2 trucks, one of my drivers injured. They're pushing harder. Lena stood by the counter, trying to read his expression. Did anyone? He shook his head. Not my men. The Vessies weren't so lucky. She exhaled, torn between relief and unease. Dominic, how many times can this go on before everything collapses? He looked at her. Until one side stops breathing. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He downed the drink in one motion, then turned toward the window. Rain streaked the glass like tears. Lena walked closer, her voice soft. You can't keep living like this. You'll lose yourself. Dominic's reflection met hers in the glass. Maybe that's what it takes to win. Then what's left after you win? She asked. He didn't answer. She took the glass from his hand and set it down. You don't have to prove anything. Not to them. Not to your father. Not to me. His jaw tightened. You think walking away fixes everything? No, she said. But maybe it fixes you. For a moment, the mask slipped. The man beneath, tired, haunted, showed through. He reached out, his fingers brushing her wrist. You make it sound easy. It isn't, she whispered. But it's possible. He turned fully toward her, searching her eyes as if looking for a truth he wasn't ready to hear. The silence stretched until a knock shattered it. Dominic's guard entered, eyes tense. Boss, we've got a problem. Dominic's hand dropped from Lena's wrist. What kind? Someone inside's talking. A leak. They knew where your trucks were headed last night. Dominic's eyes darkened. Who? We're still tracing it. He grabbed his jacket. Find them. Quietly. Understood. As the door closed, Dominic turned back to Lena. Stay here. Don't go out. Not even for coffee. Dominic. He cut her off gently. Please. Just this once. Then he was gone, leaving her standing in the echo of his footsteps, the weight of worry pressing down like fog. Hours crawled by. Rain turned to thunder. Lena tried to distract herself, cleaning, cooking, pacing, but the silence of the house grew unbearable. She turned on the radio, but every song reminded her of him. Finally, she sat by the fire, staring into the flames. She couldn't shake the image of Dominic's face when he'd said, "Until one side stops breathing." It was more than anger. It was a man drowning in his own survival. When the front door opened hours later, she jumped to her feet. Dominic walked in, soaked and silent. "Did you find out who it was?" she asked. He nodded once. "I handled it." The way he said it made her stomach twist. "Handled how?" "Don't ask. I'm asking." He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "He was one of mine. Someone I trusted. They paid him to sell routes, schedules, everything. He won't do it again." The quiet between them was thick. Lena stepped closer. "Every time someone betrays you, do you fix it with blood?" "Betrayal has consequences." "So does losing yourself," she whispered. Dominic's gaze locked on hers. "If you want to save me, Lena, you can't keep asking me to be someone else." She hesitated. "Maybe I'm not trying to change you. Maybe I just don't want you to die." His shoulders dropped slightly. "You think I want to live this way? Then stop." He shook his head. "You don't just walk away from this world. It follows you." "Then let it follow," she said, her voice trembling. "Let it chase, but at least you'll be running toward something better." Dominic stared at her, a long, unreadable stare, then stepped forward and kissed her. It wasn't the desperate kind from before. It was slow, deliberate, almost aching. When he pulled back, he said softly, "You don't know what you're asking of me." "Yes, I do," she whispered. "I'm asking you to live." The next morning, Dominic disappeared again, but this time Lena didn't wait helplessly. She made coffee, found a spare car key, and left the safe house. If she was going to be in his world, she needed to see it fully, not from behind locked doors. She drove toward the docks, following the directions she'd overheard him give one of his men. The closer she got, the more uneasy she felt. The streets were lined with warehouses, black cars, and men with sharp eyes. When she parked, 2 guards stopped her immediately. "You lost, lady," one said. "I'm here to see Mr. Rinaldi," she said, steadying her voice. The men exchanged looks, then one spoke into his earpiece. Moments later, another voice answered, "Let her in." They led her inside. The warehouse buzzed with low conversation. Dominic stood near a table covered with maps, giving orders. When he saw her, his expression darkened. "What are you doing here?" "I told you I'm not hiding," she said. This isn't a place for you. Too bad. I'm already here. The room went silent. Even his men looked uneasy. No one talked to Dominic Rinaldi like that. Dominic pinched the bridge of his nose. You're impossible. And you're not invincible, she shot back. I wanted to see what you're fighting for. What you're losing yourself for. He motioned for his men to leave. When they were alone, he said quietly, You think this is about greed? About power? Look around. These men have families. Kids. They depend on me to keep food on their tables. If I fall, they fall with me. Lena shook her head. That's not protection. That's a prison. Maybe. But it's the only one I know. Then let me help you build something else, she said. Dominic looked at her for a long time, his jaw tight. You'd risk everything for that? For you, she said simply. He swallowed hard, the wall around him cracking. Then I guess we're building a new world together. By the end of the week, Dominic's enemies had made their move. The Vessies attacked a shipment near the freeway, setting it ablaze. 3 of Dominic's men were injured. The city buzzed with rumors. Police blocked off streets. Businesses tied to the Rinaldi family shut their doors. And through it all, Dominic remained eerily calm. Lena sat in his office at the docks while he made call after call. His tone never changed, steady, cold, precise. Finally, he hung up and looked at her. It's time. For what? To end this. You mean? Yes, he said. War. She stepped forward. Dominic, please. You can't fight fire with fire. He gave a short, bitter laugh. It's the only language they understand. Then let them be the ones who burn, she said desperately. You can still walk away. Not anymore. They came for you, Lena. That means it's personal now. Her breath caught. What do you mean they came for me? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, One of my men caught them watching the cafe. They were planning to grab you. Lena's knees went weak. Why? Because they know what you mean to me. Her voice trembled. And what do I mean to you? Dominic stepped closer, his expression unreadable. Everything. For a moment, neither moved. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Then he turned to his men. No more warnings. No more mercy. The room exploded into movement, radios crackling, orders shouted. Cars started outside, engines rumbling like growls in the dark. Lena grabbed his arm. Dominic, please. Don't do this. He cupped her face gently, his touch both tender and final. You made me see I could be better. But first, I have to survive this. Then let me stay with you. He shook his head. If anything happens to you, I'll lose what little humanity I have left. Dominic. He kissed her forehead. Wait for me. Then he was gone. Hours later, the city erupted. Gunfire echoed from the industrial district. Sirens screamed. The night lit up with fire. Lena sat alone in the safe house, every sound making her flinch. She checked her phone constantly, praying for a message, a call, anything. Midnight came. Still nothing. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her coat, keys, and Dominic's silver pistol, the one he'd left on the table beside her. The city was chaos. Smoke rose from burning cars. Streets were blocked by police. She weaved through the mess until she reached the docks. The warehouse was half destroyed. Bullet holes riddled the walls. Men shouted orders, carrying wounded comrades. Where's Dominic? She demanded, grabbing one of the guards. He's inside. It's bad. She ran before he could stop her. Inside, the air was thick with gunpowder. Dominic stood at the center, blood on his sleeve, a pistol in hand. Around him lay the remnants of a battle, broken crates, shattered glass, silence. When he saw her, his expression twisted in shock and fury. What are you doing here? I couldn't stay away, she said, breathless. I had to know you were alive. He dropped the gun, stepping toward her. You shouldn't have come. You always say that, she said, voice trembling, and I always come anyway. For a second, something like laughter escaped him, rough and tired. You're unbelievable. Are you hurt? Just a graze. She looked around at the chaos. Is it over? He shook his head. Not yet. But it will be soon. Lena stepped closer, placing her hand against his chest. Then promise me something. What? When it's over, no more blood. No more wars. He hesitated, then nodded. I promise. They stood there in the broken silence, surrounded by smoke and ruin, two people bound by choices they never meant to make. Outside, sirens grew louder. The city was coming for them both. Dominic took her hand. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Lena looked up at him, tears glinting in her eyes. Always. He squeezed her hand, his voice low. Then let's finish what we started. They stepped out into the night, into a city on fire, into the storm they had created, into the uncertain dawn waiting beyond the smoke. And somewhere in that chaos, something fragile but unbreakable had begun to burn brighter than the war itself. The city didn't sleep that night. The smoke from the docks drifted through the streets, staining the skyline a dull gray. The rain had stopped, but the air carried the heavy scent of gunpowder and burnt metal. Dominic Rinaldi stood on the roof of a nearby warehouse, watching the chaos below. His men were sweeping the streets, securing what was left of his territory. The Vesey family had been hit hard, too hard to recover easily, but Dominic wasn't celebrating. His victory felt hollow. Lena stood behind him, her coat pulled tight against the cold wind. She had refused to stay behind. She wasn't a bystander anymore, not after what she'd seen, not after what she'd done to protect him. Is it over? She asked quietly. Dominic didn't turn. For them? Almost. For me? Never. She took a slow step forward. You made me a promise, Dominic. No more blood after this. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. And I meant it. But promises are easy when you're not staring down ghosts. Then stop staring at them, she said, moving closer. You're alive. You have a chance to start again. He turned to her finally. The city's dim light caught the exhaustion on his face, the bruises on his jaw, the tiredness in his eyes. Start again as what, Lena? A man with too much blood on his hands to ever feel clean again. You start again as someone who's trying, she said softly. Dominic laughed under his breath, a sound that was half disbelief, half gratitude. You talk like it's simple. It's not. But it's possible. He studied her for a long time, then nodded slowly. If I do this, if I walk away, there's no coming back. My men, my empire, they'll all scatter. Someone else will rise in my place. Let them, she said. You've already paid enough for this crown. The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. Then a voice broke through the quiet. Boss. One of Dominic's men came running up the stairs, breathless. We found something. Dominic's expression hardened instantly. What is it? The man handed him a black envelope, sealed with wax. Dominic opened it carefully. Inside was a note, written in neat handwriting. You took our blood. Now we take yours. Beneath the message was a photo, Lena at the cafe, smiling, unaware of the camera. Lena's stomach dropped. Dominic. He crumpled the photo in his fist. They're still out there. Then let the police handle it, she said. He shook his head. No. This isn't a threat to me. It's a threat to you. And I don't let people touch what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice sent a chill through her. Not fear, but something raw and fierce. Dominic, you promised. He looked at her sharply. I promised you'd be safe. That's what I'm keeping. Before she could protest, he was already giving orders. Marco, double security at the cafe. No one in or out without my say. Get eyes on the Vessi's remaining safe houses. I want names, addresses, everything. Lena grabbed his arm. You can't fight forever. He turned, his voice low and steady. I can fight long enough to make sure they never touch you again. The way he said it, absolute, final, made her realize he wasn't fighting for power anymore. He was fighting for her. The next night, the cafe was silent. Only one dim light glowed in the corner where Lena sat, her hands around a cup she hadn't touched. She felt trapped between two worlds, the quiet, simple one she used to live in and the violent, complicated one Dominic ruled. When the door creaked open, she looked up sharply. Dominic entered, coat wet from the drizzle. He looked tired but alive. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. This is where it all started, he replied. Seems right that it ends here too. He sat across from her, his eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. You know, I used to think power was everything. That if I controlled enough, nothing could hurt me. But power doesn't stop bullets. It doesn't stop nightmares. What does? She asked. He smiled faintly. You. Somehow, you do. The honesty in his voice made her heart twist. Dominic, if you really mean that, then walk away. Tonight. Before something else happens. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. And if I do, will you come with me? She froze. What? You said you wanted me to start again. I can't do that here. Not in this city. But if you walk out that door with me, I'll leave it all behind. Lena's pulse quickened. You'd give up everything? For you, he said simply. She searched his face, looking for doubt, but there was none. Only the man she'd seen glimpses of beneath the mask. Finally, she nodded. Then let's go. Dominic's expression softened into something almost peaceful. He stood, pulling her into his arms. You just changed everything, he whispered against her hair. But outside, in the quiet rain, someone watched from across the street, a shadow waiting for its moment. They left before sunrise. Dominic drove, eyes fixed on the empty road stretching ahead. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by misty hills and the quiet hum of the highway. Lena sat beside him, hands clasped in her lap. Where are we going? Somewhere no one will find us, he said. For the first time, he sounded free, lighter, almost human. The tension in his shoulders had eased. His eyes, though still sharp, carried a kind of calm she'd never seen. She smiled faintly. You sound like a man who believes in tomorrow. I'm trying to. They drove in silence for miles. The first hint of dawn painted the sky pink and gold. For a brief, perfect moment, the world felt untouched by violence. But peace has a way of breaking when you least expect it. As they approached a bridge over the river, Dominic's phone buzzed. He ignored it. When it buzzed again, he frowned and checked the screen. It was Marco. He answered, voice clipped. What is it? Marco's voice came through, panicked. Boss, they knew. The Vessis, they found out you were leaving. They're moving now. Trucks, guns, everything. They're coming for you. Dominic's knuckles tightened on the steering wheel. How? I don't know. Someone leaked the route. Before he could finish, a black SUV screeched onto the bridge ahead, blocking their path. Another one pulled up behind them. Hold on, Dominic said. He swerved hard, spinning the car sideways. Gunfire erupted, echoing off the metal bridge. Lena screamed, ducking low. Dominic! Stay down! He shouted, pulling a pistol from the glove box. He fired through the windshield, hitting one of the attackers. The SUV ahead reversed, trying to block him again. Dominic floored the accelerator, slamming into its side. Metal crunched, sparks flew, and the car broke free. But there were more behind them, 3 cars now, gaining fast. Get down! He yelled again, firing out the window. Glass shattered. Dominic, we can't outrun them, she cried. I'm not trying to outrun them. He swerved toward the edge of the bridge, braking hard behind a line of concrete barriers. He grabbed her hand. "When I tell you to run, you run. I'm not leaving you." He looked at her, eyes fierce. "You said you wanted me to live. Let me protect you first." Before she could argue, the attackers were there, 6 men, moving fast. Dominic stepped out, firing. 2 went down immediately. The others spread out, returning fire. Bullets sparked off the barriers. Lena ducked behind the car, heart pounding. She wanted to scream, to run, to help, but all she could do was pray he survived. Dominic reloaded, moved low, and fired again. One attacker lunged, catching him off guard. They struggled, fists and fury, until Dominic slammed the man against the railing and threw him over. When the gunfire finally stopped, smoke hung in the air. Dominic lowered his weapon, breathing hard. "Dominic!" Lena ran to him, grabbing his arm. "Are you okay?" He nodded, though blood darkened his sleeve. "I'm fine. It's over." But as he spoke, one last attacker rose from behind a wrecked car, gun in hand. "Dominic!" she screamed. He turned just as the gun fired. The shot echoed across the bridge. For a moment, everything froze, the sound, the air, even time itself. Then Dominic fell to one knee, clutching his side. He fired once, hitting the attacker square in the chest. "Dominic!" Lena caught him as he collapsed against her. No, stay with me." He gritted his teeth, blood seeping through his shirt. "It's not deep. You're bleeding." He managed a faint smile. "You should see the other guy." Tears blurred her vision. "Don't joke right now." He reached up, his hand trembling, brushing a tear from her cheek. "You said you wanted me to live. I'm trying." Sirens wailed in the distance. Police, finally responding. Lena pressed her hand to the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Just hold on, please." He looked at her, that same calm strength in his eyes. "If I don't make it—" "Don't you dare," she said fiercely. "We're not done yet." He laughed weakly. "You always get the last word." The sirens grew louder. She could see the flashing lights now, reflecting off the bridge's wet surface. Dominic's eyes fluttered. "Lena, I'm right here. I told you, my world follows me." "Then we'll outrun it," she whispered. "Together." He smiled faintly. "Together." Hours later, sunlight broke through the clouds. The bridge was swarming with police and medics. Dominic lay on a stretcher, pale but alive, his hand clutching hers tightly. As they loaded him into the ambulance, he looked at her and said, "You saved me again." Lena shook her head, tears streaming. "No, Dominic. This time, you saved yourself." The ambulance doors closed, and as the sirens faded into the distance, Lena stood on the bridge, the morning sun glinting off the water below. The city behind her was still burning, still broken, but for the first time, she felt something new, hope. The war might not be over, but Dominic Rinaldi, the man the city feared, had finally learned what it meant to fight for something more than power. He had learned to fight for life. And beside him, Lena Hayes, the waitress who once slipped him a warning on a napkin, had become his reason to keep breathing. Rain returned 2 days after the bridge attack, falling softly against the hospital windows. The world outside blurred into silver streaks of water and light. Inside, Dominic lay in a quiet room, monitors humming beside him. The bandage at his side was clean now, the worst behind him, though he still looked fragile, paler than Lena had ever seen. She sat in the chair beside his bed, fingers loosely wrapped around his hand. He had been asleep for hours, drifting in and out. Sometimes his grip tightened as if he were fighting invisible battles in his dreams. When he stirred, Lena leaned forward. "Dominic!" His eyes opened slowly. For a second, confusion clouded them. Then he saw her, and the tension in his face softened. "You stayed. I told you I would." He gave a faint smile. "You should rest, Lena. I will when you do." He shifted slightly, grimacing. The doctor says I'll live. I already knew that, she said. He looked at her more carefully. How? Because you don't quit, she whispered. You never have. He studied her for a long moment, the corners of his mouth twitching. I think I'm learning to change that. She laughed quietly, relief spilling out in shaky breaths. For a few minutes, neither spoke. The silence between them felt different now, softer, alive with unspoken things. After a while, Dominic said, My men think I should disappear for a while. Leave the country until things calm down. And will you? He stared at the rain-streaked glass. I don't know. Every time I plan my next move, it feels like I'm still playing the same old game. Then stop playing. He looked at her. And do what instead? Start living, she said simply. You don't have to be the man everyone fears. You could be the man who owns a cafe, reads the morning paper, and goes home without checking over his shoulder. He chuckled softly. You make it sound easy. It isn't. But you've done harder things. He didn't answer. Instead he reached out, brushing his thumb across her hand. When I woke up on that bridge, all I could think about was you. Everything else, money, power, enemies, it all faded. You're the only thing that feels real. Lena's throat tightened. Then hold on to that, Dominic. Let that be the start. 3 days later, the doctor discharged him under strict orders to rest. Dominic ignored half the instructions before they even left the building. A sleek black car waited outside. Home? Lena asked as they climbed in. He shook his head. Not yet. The driver headed north, away from the city. The roads grew quieter, lined with fields washed green by the rain. Finally, the car stopped in front of a small lakeside cabin. Lena blinked in surprise. What is this place? My father bought it years ago, Dominic said. I haven't been here since he died. Thought maybe it was time. The air smelled of pine and wet earth. Inside, the cabin was simple. Wooden floors, stone fireplace, shelves lined with old books. The silence felt healing. Lena walked to the window, watching the lake ripple under the wind. It's peaceful. That's the point. He lowered himself carefully onto the couch, wincing at the pull in his side. She moved to help him, but he waved her off with a tired smile. Sit with me instead, he said. She sat beside him, tucking her legs under her. For the first time in weeks, there were no guards, no gunfire, no phone calls. Just them, the sound of rain, and a quiet they didn't know how to fill. After a long pause, Dominic said, You know, when I was younger, I thought love was weakness. My father told me caring about anyone made you vulnerable. And now? She asked. He looked at her, eyes steady. Now I think love might be the only thing that makes any of this make sense. Her breath caught. That's a dangerous thought for a man like you. Maybe, he said, but I'm tired of being afraid of it. Lena smiled faintly. Then stop being afraid. He reached for her hand again, holding it against his chest. His heartbeat was strong, steady, a reminder that he was still here. For the first time since she met him, Dominic Rinaldi looked like a man who believed he could be saved. The next morning dawned clear, sunlight glinting across the water. Dominic stood outside, his jacket open, eyes on the horizon. Lena brought him coffee, the steam curling into the cool air. Feeling better? She asked. Almost human, he said. That's progress. She laughed softly. I'll take it. He took a sip of coffee and sighed. You know, I've been thinking about something. When I was in that hospital bed, I kept hearing my father's voice. He used to say a man's legacy is built by what he leaves behind. I thought he meant money, territory, power. But maybe he meant peace. Lena leaned against the railing. Peace would be a good legacy. He nodded slowly. Maybe it's time to build it. But peace, like most fragile things, is easy to break. A car engine rumbled in the distance. Dominic turned sharply, instincts returning like a blade drawn from its sheath. Expecting someone? Lena asked, sensing the change in him. No. A black sedan pulled up on the gravel road. Two men stepped out, Marco and Antonio. Both looked grim. Dominic's shoulders tensed. This better be good news. Marco hesitated. We cleaned up the last of the Vessi mess, but there's something else. Someone's been moving in while you were gone. A new name. Who? Emilio Santoro. Dominic froze. The name hit like a memory he'd tried to bury. Santoro's dead. Apparently not. He's back. And he's claiming half the East Docks are his. Lena watched the color drain from Dominic's face. Who is he? Dominic's voice was low. An old ally. The man who helped me make that deal in Milan. The one that started everything. Marco stepped closer. He says you owe him. He's coming to collect. Dominic's jaw tightened. When? Tonight. Silence fell. The wind off the lake rustled through the trees. Lena's heart thudded. Dominic, you can't face him. You're not healed. He turned to her. If I don't, he'll come for us. He doesn't make threats he won't keep. Then we leave. Now. Dominic looked out at the water, torn. For once, he looked uncertain. Running only delays it. If I don't end this now, it never ends. Lena grabbed his hand. Then promise me one thing. You come back. He nodded once. I promise. Night fell fast. The lake shimmered under the moonlight as Dominic's car disappeared down the dirt road. Lena stayed on the porch, watching the taillights vanish into darkness. Every instinct screamed at her to go after him, but she forced herself to trust. Inside the car, Dominic sat silent, his reflection flickering in the window. The road twisted through the woods until city lights reappeared ahead. He met Emilio Santoro in an abandoned warehouse by the river, the same place he'd made his first deal years ago. History repeating itself. Santoro stepped out of the shadows, older now but still sharp-eyed, wearing an expensive coat and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Dominic Rinaldi, he said, spreading his arms. The ghost who lived. Dominic didn't smile. You should have stayed gone. I could say the same. They circled each other slowly, years of mistrust hanging between them. You owe me, Santoro said. Half your docks. Half your business. That was our deal. That deal died when you tried to kill me, Dominic said flatly. Santoro's grin widened. Business. Not personal. But this feels personal. He gestured, and two men stepped out from the dark corners, guns raised. Dominic didn't flinch. I came alone, Dominic said, but that doesn't mean I came unprepared. The lights flicked on overhead. Marco and Antonio appeared on the balcony above, weapons drawn. The balance shifted instantly. Santoro's eyes narrowed. Still playing chess, I see. Dominic's voice was cold. Not anymore. This is my last game. The tension crackled. Then, suddenly, Santoro laughed. You're serious. You're done. I am, Dominic said. You walk away tonight, you live. Stay, and it ends here. Santoro studied him for a long moment. You've gone soft, Rinaldi. Maybe, Dominic said, but even soft things can cut if you push them far enough. Santoro smirked, but there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. He took a step back, gestured to his men, and said, Enjoy your retirement, Dominic. For what it's worth, I hope she's worth it. He walked out into the night. Dominic exhaled slowly, lowering his weapon. The war, at last, was over. By the time he returned to the cabin, dawn was breaking. The lake mirrored the first blush of light, calm and endless. Lena rushed out to meet him, barefoot on the cold wood. You're back. I told you I would be. She looked at him, searching for wounds, for signs of another fight. Is it over? He nodded. For good this time. Relief flooded her face. She leaned into him, arms around his waist, holding him as though afraid he might disappear. He rested his chin on her hair and whispered, "No more running. No more war," she replied. They stood together until the sky turned gold, the water still and clear before them. For the first time since they met, there were no enemies left to fight, no debts left unpaid, only the quiet rhythm of two hearts learning how to beat in peace. And as the sun rose higher, Dominic Rinaldi finally understood what freedom felt like. The days that followed were the calmest Dominic had known in years. The lake reflected the sky like a mirror, and the air smelled of pine and early summer. There were no calls from his men, no coded messages, no news of fires or blood. Only silence, still and healing. Lena woke early every morning, making coffee while Dominic read by the window. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. Words weren't needed. Their quiet routine spoke for them. She found him one morning standing by the water, sleeves rolled to his elbows, skipping stones across the surface. For a man who once commanded fear, he looked startlingly human, almost boyish in that small act of peace. "You're getting good at that," she said softly, walking down the small slope to him. He glanced at her, smiling faintly. "You learn fast when there's finally time to breathe." "Do you miss it?" she asked. "The city, the noise." Dominic watched the stone vanish into the rippling lake. "Sometimes. But then I remember what it cost." Lena wrapped her arms around herself. "Do you ever think about going back?" "Every day," he said. "And every day, I remind myself I made a promise. You can't rebuild something if you never stop breaking it." She smiled faintly. That almost sounded poetic. He chuckled. "Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation." They stood in silence again, the kind that felt safe. A small boat drifted far out on the water, its occupant just a dark speck in the distance. Lena's mind wandered. "Do you ever wonder what you'd have done if we never met?" Dominic looked at her, expression thoughtful. "I'd probably be dead. Or worse, alive but hollow. And now," he said, "I'm learning what it means to live without needing to control everything." She smiled. "That's a good start." He turned toward her then, really looking. The morning light caught the faint scar near his jaw, a reminder of the life he'd left behind. "I still don't know how to thank you," he said. "You don't need to." "I do," he insisted. "You gave me something no one ever did, choice. You made me believe I could be someone else." Lena stepped closer. "And have you decided who that someone is?" He smiled slowly. "Not yet. But I know who I want beside me while I figure it out." Her heart caught. "Dominic!" He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his hand lingering. "You make peace look easy." "It isn't," she whispered. "You just have to want it badly enough." He leaned in, his voice low. "I do." For a moment, they stood like that, the air between them warm and still. Then he kissed her, gentle but certain. It wasn't the desperate hunger of survival, but the quiet promise of something lasting. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her head against his chest. "Maybe this is what we were fighting for all along," she said. "Maybe it is," he murmured. "And maybe it's time to stop fighting entirely." Later that afternoon, Dominic went into town for the first time in weeks. Lena stayed behind, tidying the cabin, humming softly to herself. When he returned, he carried a small brown bag. Inside were groceries, a newspaper, and a folded envelope. He placed the envelope on the table and sat down heavily. "What's that?" she asked. He hesitated. "A letter. From Marco." Lena frowned. "I thought you told him not to contact you." "I did. Which means it's important." He unfolded the paper slowly, scanning the neat handwriting. As his eyes moved down the page, his jaw clenched. "What is it?" she asked, nervous now. He passed the letter to her. "Was. The Vessies are gone, but others are rising. The power vacuum left behind is drawing new blood. They're talking about bringing back the old ways, the kind your father ruled with. They're using your name, Marco. Lena read it twice before looking up. They're trying to rebuild the world you left. Dominic nodded grimly. And they're doing it under my banner. So stop them, she said. His eyes met hers. If I go back, even once, there's no leaving again. Then send someone else. No one else can make them listen. Dominic. He cut her off gently. If I let them do this, everything we fought for dies anyway. She stood there for a long time, torn between anger and understanding. And if you go back, what happens to us? He looked at her steadily. I don't know. But if I don't go, what happens to the people who believed in me? Lena turned away, arms wrapped tight around herself. So those people always come first. No, he said softly. You do. That's why I have to make sure this ends cleanly. The silence between them stretched like glass, fragile, trembling. Finally, she whispered, then promise me one thing. Anything. You come back. No matter what. He nodded once, his voice steady. I swear it. But as he packed that night, loading a gun, folding a single dark suit, slipping on the old gold watch his father had given him, Lena stood in the doorway, watching with a feeling she couldn't name. She wanted to stop him, but she knew this was the only way he could ever truly let go. When he was ready, he turned to her. You don't have to wait. I will, she said simply. Even if it takes forever. The city looked smaller than Dominic remembered. He stood on a rooftop overlooking the skyline, the same skyline that had once bowed to him. It was strange to see it without the familiar pulse of power in his veins. He was no longer a king, just a man trying to bury his throne. The meeting took place in a downtown club once owned by his family. The men waiting inside were young, bold, and hungry. They greeted him with forced respect. Rinaldi, one of them said, leaning back in his chair. Didn't think we'd ever see you again. Dominic's gaze swept the room. I told you to leave my name out of your games. The man smirked. Your name built this city. You can't erase history. I can erase what's left of it, Dominic said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Another man stood, trying to match his confidence. You walked away, Dominic. You don't get to tell us how to run things now. Dominic's eyes hardened. I walked away because I was done spilling blood for ghosts. You want power? Fine. But not under my name. The tension thickened. The young man laughed. You think you can stop us? You're outnumbered. Dominic smiled faintly. You're too young to understand something important. What's that? That real power isn't fear. It's control. Before the man could answer, Dominic pulled a small device from his coat pocket, a phone connected to Marco's men stationed outside. Step out of line again, he said quietly, and every illegal shipment, every dirty account, every bribe you've ever taken goes public. You'll spend the rest of your lives running. The laughter died instantly. He slipped the phone back into his coat. You wanted my legacy? Here it is. Learn to build something worth keeping, or you'll drown in the ruins I left behind. No one spoke. Dominic turned and walked out. The air outside felt cold, clean, final. He drove through the sleeping city, past the alleys and bridges that had once whispered his name. Everything felt distant, like a life he'd read about in another man's story. When he reached the edge of town, he stopped at a small park that overlooked the river. The same one where his father used to bring him as a boy. He stood there for a long time, watching the water move, endlessly forward, never back. He pulled out his phone and called Lena. She answered on the second ring. Dominic. It's done. She exhaled. You're coming home? He smiled faintly. If you still want me there. I've been waiting since you left, she said softly. Then I'll be there before sunrise. He drove through the night, headlights cutting through the fog. Every mile between him and the cabin felt like shedding another piece of the man he used to be. When he arrived, dawn was breaking, soft pink light spreading across the water. Lena stood outside, wrapped in a blanket, eyes tired but bright. He stepped out of the car, and before he could speak, she ran to him. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "I told you I would." She searched his face. "Is it really over?" He nodded. "For good this time." She rested her head against his chest. "Then what happens now?" Dominic looked out at the lake, the reflection of morning light shimmering like gold. "Now we build something that lasts. No lies. No shadows. And if the past comes back, then we remind it we're not afraid anymore." They stood together as the sun climbed higher, painting the world in color again. Dominic took her hand and led her toward the cabin. "I think it's time we made this place ours. A real beginning." Lena smiled, her fingers tightening around his. "I like the sound of that." Inside, he set his old gun on the mantelpiece, a relic no longer needed. Then he turned to her, his eyes warm. "You know, I used to think the world only respected power. But maybe power's just what you give up when you find something worth keeping." Lena brushed a hand along his cheek. "And what did you find?" He kissed her forehead gently. Peace. Maybe even forgiveness." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of new rain. The lake shimmered quietly, reflecting a sky that no longer looked gray. And as the day unfolded, the man who had once ruled a city finally found something greater than control. He found a home. The cabin had slowly transformed into a home. The heavy silence of fear was gone, replaced by the soft noises of life. The bubbling of coffee in the morning, the creak of wooden floors beneath bare feet, the laughter that came easier with each passing day. Dominic spent most of his mornings by the window, newspaper in hand, though he rarely read it. Old habits lingered. He still scanned the headlines, half expecting his name to appear, but now the stories were about politics, weather, and weekend markets. The city moved on without him, and for once, that felt like freedom. Lena filled their days with quiet rhythm. She painted the walls, planted flowers by the porch, and brought color into a space that had long been gray. Sometimes she'd hum while cooking, a tune Dominic didn't recognize but found comforting. It reminded him that peace didn't have to be grand. It could be small and gentle, built one day at a time. One afternoon, while she was rearranging books on the shelf, he came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "You work too much," he murmured against her ear. She smiled, leaning into him. "Says the man who used to run half a city." Keyword, used to. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "Do you ever miss it? The power?" He thought for a moment. "No. I miss the purpose, sometimes. But I don't miss who I had to be to keep it." "You still have purpose, Dominic. You just changed what it looks like." He nodded slowly. "You always know what to say. That's because I pay attention." He smiled, brushing his thumb across her cheek. "Then tell me what you see when you look at me now." She studied him. The faint lines around his eyes, the calm steadiness in his gaze that hadn't been there before. "I see a man learning how to be happy." Dominic laughed quietly. "Learning, huh? Not there yet." "Almost," she teased. "You just need more practice." "Then you better not leave my side," he said softly. "I wasn't planning to." That evening, they sat outside watching the sunset bleed across the lake. The water mirrored the sky's pink and gold. Dominic poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to her. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. "To survival," he countered with a grin. They clinked glasses. After a while, Lena asked, "Do you think the city still remembers you?" "Maybe. Legends fade slower than men do." "Do you want them to forget?" He took a long sip before answering. "Yes. I want them to remember a version of me that's dead, so the one that's left can live." Lena smiled faintly. "Then we'll let him rest." He looked at her, his voice soft. "You really believe in second lives, don't you?" "I believe in people who want to change," she said. "And you did." He reached for her hand. "Then maybe this is my second life." She squeezed his fingers. "Then live it fully." The wind shifted, cool and clean. For the first time in years, Dominic didn't feel watched. The world had finally stopped looking for him. But sometimes peace brings its own ghosts. Late that night, he woke to a sound, the faint crunch of gravel outside. He sat up instantly, heart pounding. Old instincts returned like a whisper in his blood. He moved to the window quietly. The moonlight glinted off something near the edge of the drive, a black car, parked but running. Lena stirred in bed. "Dominic." He turned quickly. "Stay here." "What's wrong?" "Probably nothing." But his voice was too calm, too careful. He stepped outside, barefoot on the porch, the night air cold against his skin. The car engine idled softly. He approached slowly, ready for anything. When he reached the driver's side, the window rolled down. Marco sat inside, older, tired, but alive. "Didn't think I'd find you this far out," Marco said. Dominic exhaled, tension easing. "You shouldn't have." "I had to. It's about the business. I told you I was done." Marco nodded. "I know. But some things don't end just because you walk away." Dominic's voice hardened. "What happened?" "The old crew, some of them didn't take your exit well. They think you abandoned them. There's talk of reorganizing. New leadership. Your name's being thrown around again." Dominic's jaw tightened. "I don't care. They can fight for what's left of it." Marco hesitated. "You might not care, but they're using your name, your reputation, to make people fall in line. If you don't step in, this peace you built, it won't last." Silence stretched between them. Dominic's hands curled into fists. After a long moment, he said quietly, "Leave it to me." Marco frowned. "What are you planning?" "Something different this time." He turned and walked back to the cabin. Inside, Lena sat on the edge of the bed, watching him as he came in. "Who was it?" "An old friend," he said. "Bringing bad news." She studied his face. "You're going to do something, aren't you?" "Yes," he said simply. "But not what you think." He sat beside her, taking her hands. "I can't stop people from using my name. But maybe I can change what it means." "What do you mean?" "If they're going to rebuild something, it shouldn't be out of fear. I want to turn it into something clean. Real businesses. Jobs. No blood." Lena frowned. "You want to rebuild the empire?" "I want to rebuild it differently." She hesitated. "That sounds like a dangerous dream." "It's the only way to end this cycle. If I leave it to the wrong hands, everything we did will crumble." She searched his eyes. "Then make me a promise. Anything. If you go back with light, not darkness." He nodded slowly. "Light, then." A week later, Dominic returned to the city. He wore no suit, no gold watch, just a dark coat and a quiet purpose. The people who saw him on the streets didn't recognize him. The legend had faded, just as he'd hoped. But his men remembered. They met him at the cafe he'd once given to Lena, now open again under her chosen name, the Second Cup. It was clean, bright, full of laughter. A far cry from the smoke and silence of the old Lunas. Marco was waiting inside. "You sure about this?" Dominic nodded. "If I don't do this now, they'll twist everything I stood for." He stepped up onto the small stage at the center of the cafe. The room fell silent. Dozens of men, his former allies, enemies, soldiers, turned toward him. He spoke without raising his voice. "I built something once," he began. "It gave us power, money, control. But it also gave us pain. We lost brothers, friends, family. For what? So our names could be whispered in fear." The room stayed still. "I walked away because I was tired of being the man everyone hated to need. But now you use my name again, and that name doesn't belong to crime anymore. It belongs to rebuilding." He looked around the room. "If you want to keep fighting, Go ahead. But not under me. The Rinaldi name will stand for something else now. Real business, real work, something clean. Anyone who can't live with that walks out now. For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then Marco stepped forward. You heard him. One by one, men nodded. A few left quietly. Most stayed. Dominic exhaled, feeling something shift, an invisible weight lifting from years of violence. When it was done, he shook Marco's hand. You take care of what's left. Make it right. Marco smiled faintly. You really mean to stay gone this time? Dominic nodded. I've got a better world waiting. When he returned to the lake, Lena was on the porch, watering the flowers. She looked up as he approached, reading the answer in his eyes before he spoke. It's done, he said. All of it. He smiled faintly. Everything that mattered. She set down the watering can, walking toward him. Then you're really free. He nodded. We both are. They walked down to the water, where the reflection of the sun shimmered like melted gold. Dominic picked up a small stone, turning it over in his palm. My father used to say peace was something you had to earn twice, once by fighting, and once by choosing not to fight again. Lena smiled. Then you've earned it twice. He tossed the stone into the lake, watching the ripples fade. Maybe 3 times. For us. She slipped her hand into his. What happens now? He turned to her, eyes calm, full of light. Now we live. The kind of life that doesn't need headlines or power. Just mornings and quiet coffee. Maybe some flowers, she added, smiling. And laughter, he said. And forgiveness. He nodded. Especially that. They walked back toward the cabin, the sky fading into evening. Behind them, the ripples on the lake slowly disappeared, leaving the surface smooth and clear. Dominic looked back once, whispering almost to himself, no more ghosts. Lena heard and squeezed his hand. Only us now. As they disappeared into the warm glow of their home, the world outside kept turning, unaware that somewhere, in a quiet corner of it, a man who had once ruled the streets had finally found peace. Not in power, not in fear, but in the simple grace of beginning again. If that story pulled you in, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, drop a comment about your favorite moment, and subscribe for more stories that burn slow, hit deep, and keep you thinking long after the screen fades to black. New episodes every week. You won't want to miss what comes next.